Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday hit out at the latest sanctions imposed by the U.S., calling Washington's move an unfriendly act that could backfire by spiking global oil prices. According to Associated Press, new U.S. and European sanctions are part of a broadened effort to choke off the revenue and supplies that fuel Moscow's fighting in Ukraine, compelling Putin to negotiate an end to the conflict. Speaking to reporters in Moscow, Putin acknowledged that the serious U.S. sanctions would have certain consequences for Russia, but maintained that they would not significantly impact its economy. Energy revenue is the linchpin of Russia's economy, allowing Putin to pour money into the armed forces without worsening inflation and avoiding a currency collapse. International crude prices jumped more than $2 per barrel Thursday on news of the new U.S. sanctions against Russia's oil giants Rosneft and Lukoil. Putin said he warned U.S. President Donald Trump that an attempt to curb Russian oil exports would destabilize global oil markets and backfire against the United States. He deplored the U.S. sanctions as an unfriendly act that would damage relations with Washington and said that Moscow wouldn't yield to pressure. The U.S. sanctions came after Trump said that his plan for a swift meeting with Putin in Budapest was on hold because he didn't want it to be a waste of time. It was the latest twist in Trump's hot and cold efforts to end the war as Putin refuses to budge from his demands. Commenting on Trump's decision to put the planned summit on hold, Putin emphasized that it was the U.S. that proposed holding it and added that dialogue is always better than confrontation. The Russian leader also warned that any attempt by Ukraine to strike deep inside Russia with longer-range weapons supplied by the West would mark an escalation. It could trigger a very serious, not to say stunning, response from Russia, he said.
Это акт недружественный в отношении России, это очевидная вещь, и он не укрепляет российско-американские отношения, которые вот только-только начали восстанавливаться. Конечно, такими действиями администрация США наносит ущерб российско-американским отношениям. Да, они для нас носят серьезный, конечно, характер, это понятно, и будут иметь определенные последствия, но существенно все-таки не скажутся на нашем экономическом самочувствии.
Практически параллельно были введены американские санкции против российских нефтяных компаний.
Это, конечно, попытка оказать давление на Россию. Но ни одна уважающая себя страна и ни один уважающий себя народ никогда ничего не решает под давлением. Да, они для нас носят серьезный, конечно, характер, это понятно. А вот если резко уменьшится количество нашей нефти и нефтепродуктов на мировом рынке, то вырастут цены. И мы с моим американским коллегой тоже об этом говорили. К чему это приведет? Это приведет к резкому увеличению стоимости на нефть и нефтепродукты, в том числе на автомобильных заправках. И США не исключение. Наоборот, говорили, в том числе и в рамках международного энергетического. Попытка эскалации, но если таким оружием будут наноситься удары по российской территории, ответ будет очень серьезным, если не сказать ошеломляющим. Пусть они об этом подумают. Наоборот, говорили, в том числе и в рамках Международного энергетического агентства. Сейчас я вижу, я знаком с этим заявлением, президент США решил отменить или перенести эту встречу. Скорее, он говорит о переносе этой встречи. Что можно сказать? Диалог всегда лучше, чем какая-то конфронтация, чем какие-то споры или тем более война. Поэтому мы всегда это поддерживали, продолжение диалога, и сейчас это поддерживаем. И решение надо понять, на кого они работают. Но, безусловно, такие встречи нужно хорошо готовить, и для меня, и для американского президента было бы ошибкой подойти к этому легко и выйти после этой встречи без ожидаемого результата. И сама встреча, и место ее проведения были предложены.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said he is confident that with sustained pressure they can get Russian President Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table and agree to a ceasefire. According to Associated Press, Rutte told reporters outside the White House his meeting with Trump had been tremendously good, with a focus on how to put an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. Including what we can do to make sure that Putin accepts the president's view that the two parties should stop where they are, said Rutte. I totally support him and we will see how we can do that, he added. Trump's administration announced new sanctions against Russia's oil industry aimed at moving Putin to the negotiating table. Putin continues to frustrate the US administration's efforts to bring an end to Moscow's brutal war in Ukraine. The sanctions unveiled Wednesday against oil giants Rosneft and Lukoil followed months of calls from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenski as well as bipartisan pressure on Trump to hit Russia with harder sanctions on its oil industry, the economic engine that allows Russia to continue to execute the grinding invasion of Ukraine even as Moscow finds itself internationally isolated. Trump said he hopes the new sanctions will help make Putin reasonable and negotiate an end to the war. The US administration announced the sanctions as NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte was in Washington for talks with Trump. The military alliance has been coordinating deliveries of weapons to Ukraine, many of them purchased from the United States by Canada and European countries.
We have a plane to catch, so I cannot be too long, and you've already... I had a tremendously good meeting with President Trump. I mean, the leadership he is providing when it comes to NATO, the summit in The Hague, the 5%, the fact that since Eisenhower we never were able to equalize spending between what the Europeans and the Canadians are spending, what the US is spending, that at that summit we agreed on this famous 5%, including 3.5% on core defense spending, is now equalizing what the Canadians and the Europeans are paying into NATO and the collective NATO effort to what the US is doing. So that was a big foreign policy success of President Trump. Europe is stepping up also in other domains, including when it comes to buying weapons from the US to be delivered into Ukraine, very important for the war effort. And today we particularly focus on how can we end the war? What can I do, what can NATO do to support President Trump's vision of ending this war, ending the killing in Ukraine, including what we can do to make sure that Putin accepts the president's view that the two parties should stop where they are, as he said on Friday and on Sunday. I totally support him, and we will see how we can do that. What NATO is doing is trying collectively to sustain Ukraine in this fight. But of course we all want this fighting to end. So his position here, and I completely support this, is, as he said, stop where you are. So as both to the Ukrainians as well to the Russians. Yes, when you look at the Russian side, they started this war. It clearly is not moving in the right direction. And when you look at this year, let's say the territory they gained in Ukraine is extremely limited. And as I said, against enormous amount of people dying and getting seriously wounded. The Russian economy is in a difficult situation. We know we have these long lines into gasoline stations all over Russia at the moment. We know that the French president and others in Europe stepped up when it comes to the shadow fleet. And of course we have seen the pressure by the American president on some European countries to stop buying oil. So all of this is having an impact. So I'm absolutely convinced that with sustained pressure, we will be able to get Putin to the table to agree with a ceasefire and then other talks coming after that. And you have seen it in the last couple of weeks. Alaska happened when the American president decided to do secondary sanctions on India buying Russian oil. We have seen last week the call taking place when the president said, I'm contemplating sending Tomahawks into Ukraine, for Ukraine to be used. So this is clear evidence that we can change Putin's calculus. Yes. Now with Spain, I had many talks with the president of the government, Prime Minister Sanchez. We know each other very well. Spain has committed to deliver the capability targets. They are saying we can do it on a percentage lower than 3.5. I said, you cannot, and we will pretty soon find out who is right.
Has the White House...
Thank you, bye-bye.